What's going on, everyone, and happy Wednesday. The market was a little bit choppy today, but we did see a handful of stocks move in some pretty interesting ways. We could see some of the chip stocks sold off a good amount today. Tesla fell by 4.5% yet again, and we just saw a lot of chop, you can say. Looking at tomorrow, we do have a handful of stocks coiling up and waiting to move in a big way, so we're definitely going to cover those stocks. And we also have a little bit more economic data set to release. And on top of that, if you haven't already heard about this, the U.S. government is getting pretty dang close to banning TikTok. So, of course, we're definitely going to talk about that and the potential implications it has for the stock market. We do have a pretty interesting $1.5 million big money trade today as well. So stick with us for that. And Tom, let's get right into it.
Yeah, the overall market today was pretty choppy, like you said. At open, we started running down slightly, but we were up so much going into close yesterday that whenever we opened today, that downside move wasn't really anything. And then, we really chopped around all day till the end of the day whenever we finally had a bit of a sell-off, and then it came right back, right? So that was just the chop of the day. That's really the overall theme of today, in my opinion. There were a few stocks that had some fairly decent moves, but as we get into the Mag 7, like Microsoft, Tesla, Apple, so many of these big stocks today had some pretty weak moves. Now, Apple and Tesla were pretty bad. Tesla, like you highlighted, was one of the worst ones of the day. So we're definitely going to get into that a little bit later on in the video. But as we go on, Mike, it's a pretty weird day overall. And I will say, as I start to look at Meta and Google and a couple of these big tech stocks, man, that news today with ByteDance was interesting. I saw Google actually popped off while many of the tech stocks were down. I wonder if this has something to do with it.
Exactly. So for those of you who don't know, ByteDance is the company that owns TikTok, and today the House passed a bill that could lead to TikTok getting banned in the United States. There are over 100 million monthly active users in the United States that use TikTok, and the House bill today got passed in a pretty big way. It was a 352 to 65 vote, so that is a pretty large majority there. And if TikTok does end up getting banned, that can be pretty big for some of TikTok's competitors like Meta and Google, as those companies own Instagram Reels and YouTube Shorts. And, again, we're talking about TikTok here, a platform that has 100 million monthly active users just in the U.S. So keep a very close eye on Meta and Google in the short term, and I'm very curious to see what ends up happening here, Tom, because so far the House passed the bill, but it's not set in stone just yet.
It's really not. It's got to go to the Senate, and I know that that's a huge stat with 100 plus monthly active users, so that would be a pretty big hit to ByteDance if that were to happen. And a lot of companies in the U.S. are actually like kind of illegal in China, like for example, like Facebook and other things like that. So it's one of those situations where, why is the U.S. doing this, right? Are they doing this because they don't trust China, obviously? I'm sure that's the case. China's trying to do things with Taiwan now and everything. That might even start to hit on, the China stocks, let's say, if it causes more tensions. But right now, the China stocks actually had a pretty good day today, kind of switching the subject over to BABA and a couple others. In after hours, though, they did start to fall a little bit. So I'm wondering if that's starting to weigh on them a little.
Yeah, we shall see, but it's pretty big news regardless, so, just keep this in the back of your mind over the next couple of days and weeks. But another thing we have to talk about right now is, as the market is still very close to all-time highs, it is important to remember that volatility is here in the market, and it's here to stay, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. So check out this chart. We could see with about 72 years worth of data, the market on average has a 3% or more dip 7 times a year, and it seems like about at least once a year, the market has a 10% correction, right? So as we look at the market right now, there is still a ton of euphoria, and that's awesome to see, but just don't forget that, believe it or not, sometimes the stock market does fall, right? And what my concern is that so many people in the market lately have been kind of spoiled with just this nonstop uptrend of just stocks going up day after day after day, where some people are getting a little bit too euphoric. So I just wanted to touch on this to make sure that everyone can weather the storm in a good way when it does end up coming along.
Yeah, and we started to see a big sell-off happen over the past couple weeks, and then even today, Nvidia had a pretty big move down in the morning. I know it tried to come back a little bit, but overall on the day, Nvidia ended up down 1%. We saw big tech stocks like Tesla. I know this isn't a chip stock, but still down 4.5% here today. Pretty big. So I'm going to continue to watch these stocks to the downside, Mike. I know that a lot of people right now, like you said, have been spoiled to the upside. So just keep this on the radar. There's a lot of good potential, and there's been a lot of fire plays coming out too. Just join the Discord, check out the profits channel. There's been a ton of profits on put plays recently, and some calls, of course. But obviously, puts have been kind of the name of the game ever since that big drop last Friday.
Yep. All right. So one of the biggest events of the week happened yesterday, and that was with the inflation report. And while that's past us, we still do have an exciting event tomorrow, which is the PPI data. So while this event isn't as crazy as the CPI inflation data, sometimes the PPI data does move the markets in a pretty meaningful way. So just keep a close eye on this 1 hour before market open. If you do see the market move in a crazy way, that will be why. And remember that momentum begets more momentum. So like, for example, when we see Nvidia blasting to the upside, that makes more people see Nvidia and more people want to get in on the action, and in turn, more people buy it and the stock goes even higher. But the same thing also works to the downside. When you have stocks falling in a major way, you have people panic selling, which causes the stock to fall even more, which makes more people panic sell, which makes the stock fall even more. And it's like a giant snowball effect. So, essentially what we're looking for going into tomorrow or any other day is just a strong move in either direction. And then we want to see that snowball effect start to happen.
Yeah, and for a lot of people that are charting out there, there's some pretty big spots here on Nvidia from the past couple days even. Like, there's a pretty big resistance right around like 912 to 915. I'm going to give it like a $3 range right there. But there's been quite a few hits, and even end of day today ended up hitting there. Right at open this morning, and pre-market ended up bouncing off there as well. So I'm going to really watch that resistance into tomorrow. If that keeps holding up on Nvidia, we might even see a move down. And, Mike, I'm not necessarily a huge fan of these patterns, but for all of my head and shoulders traders out there, this isn't the worst head and shoulders setup that I've ever seen. So just be careful tomorrow. A lot of things are kind of pointing down, and it's just not good when you start to see that, especially when stocks are this oversold.
Sounds good. And then before we get into some setups and predictions, we have to talk about this earnings calendar for tomorrow. Make sure to keep a close eye on Adobe, as they are set to report after the market closes. There are a couple other stocks set to report as well, but I would say all in all, Adobe will be the star of the show. But that is it for the calendar and normal data. So let's get right into some setups and predictions for tomorrow. A stock I'm watching pretty closely right now is BABA to the upside. I've been talking about this one in a bullish way for a couple weeks now, and it has been moving in a good way. We haven't seen any like crazy explosive, 10% days recently, but it has been slowly climbing higher, which is great to see. I would love to see a break above the $77.50 level for a move higher, but then again, it did have a decent pullback in after hours today. So, for BABA, look at it tomorrow, ideally for a break above $77.50. If that happens, then there's opportunity to the upside.
Man, I was so excited about China stocks this morning, and I don't know if it was that ByteDance news or what it was, but something happened end of day, and China stocks started coming back. But I will keep watching it up, Mike. I've been watching JD, Baidu, and a couple others too. It's been really fun to see them starting to uptrend finally. With my next play, this one might make people pretty angry. Okay, I'm just kidding. But either way, I'm looking at Tesla to the downside. It broke a major major support today around 170 to 172. Now, we can go look at this support in multiple different areas. We can go to the book map. You can look right here. Major support. I mean, huge, guys. There were so many shares stacked up. Let me scroll in a little bit just to see how many there really was. You can see it right here. 511,000 shares were stacked up at 170 this today. So overall, that broke. We saw a good move to the downside. So if we see a continuation down with Tesla tomorrow, I will continue to look at puts. Now, I go to the daily chart as well because this is a pretty nasty sell-off, Mike. This 170 to 172 support has been intact for quite a while. There's been a lot of hits off of it. Now we're getting back down into this big range again. I don't know. Are we going to see Tesla around like 130 to 100 soon? We just might, based off the way this chart's selling off.
Tom, I'll tell you, you are lucky you are talking about this in 2024 because it is socially acceptable to talk about Tesla in a bearish way now. If you said what you just said about Tesla back in 2020 or 2021, you would have seen people rioting in the streets. Like, how dare you talk about Tesla in a bearish way? But that is just how crowd psychology is, and in some ways, it's kind of like how chip stocks are right now. But yeah, Tesla has been taking quite the beating in the short term, and it's been pretty rough for them. So I'll keep a close eye on that one as well. And another setup that I am watching pretty closely is SMH. So this is an ETF full of chip stocks, and it has been blasting to the upside over the past year or so, as we've seen stocks like Nvidia just go parabolic. But I am watching this one for a pullback if it breaks below $220 a share. If it does not break below that, I do not care about trading this stock to the downside. I am not trying to fight a super strong trend. You know, if it starts ripping to the upside, I'm not going to try and fight that. But if we see like a true break below $220 a share and just a shift in sentiment with these stocks, they do have a whole lot of room to pull back to. So I am watching this one to the downside, but I want to see a break below 220 first.
Yeah, that's a major support. And Mike, for all the, I know that, we're not too big in like the head and shoulders patterns or anything like that, but that's actually kind of like the shoulder line or neck line on like a pretty good head and shoulders pattern here. And at the end of the day, what's that showing on the head and shoulders pattern at like the neckline, right? That's showing a good support where buyers start to come in and they start to push the stock up. At the same time, whenever that gives out, we might see an influx of sellers. So I'm definitely going to watch that too. With my next play, I'm looking at US Steel. Now, there's a couple ways to play this in the short term. It's a very interesting setup here, kind of like Activision. So initially, whenever US Steel started popping up recently, people were like, what's going on? They're actually getting bought out by a Japanese company, Nippon Steel. There was some pretty big news today that came out that Joe Biden's going to kind of go against that plan to buy out Nippon Steel. He's going to raise concerns, and this could obviously start to bring regulators into the question. If we start to see some more regulatory concerns with this deal in the short term, we might see some downside opportunity with X. For the long term, though, I'm going to actually look at this like Activision. With ATVI, Microsoft was trying to buy them out, and they popped up initially, right? They had a huge run up, but they ended up falling back down as those regulatory concerns came in. But as those faded, and then they started to allow the deal, it came back. So, I'm going to watch US Steel in a couple ways, but in the short term, definitely going to look at more downside opportunities.
All right, sounds good. Well, it's now about that time for today's momentum plays. And with the first one, we have Meta to the downside.
META, the daily chart doesn't look too bad, but whenever we get into the intraday charts, looks kind of rough. And if they end up breaking under this big 490 support, then I'm going to look at puts.
All right, with the next one, we have TLT also to the downside.
Yeah, we talked about this one yesterday. Ended up running down quite a bit again. If it ends up getting under 94.20 tomorrow, then look at more puts.
All right, and then with the last one, we have Coinbase for both directions.
Yeah, looking at Coinbase for tomorrow, I'm watching this big 250 support. That's going to be a huge level to watch for tomorrow, but there's even a good resistance from the past few days, right around 260. So if they can get back above 260, then look at calls. But if they end up falling under 250, then go ahead and look at the puts.
All right, and then as we know, the crypto-related stocks definitely are, they move with the sentiment and price action of Bitcoin. At the time of this recording, Bitcoin is at $73,000 a coin, but we all know how volatile that is. Sometimes we release a video and then Bitcoin either drops or pops by 10% or so. But either way, keep a close eye on Coinbase for tomorrow. We have the upside level that Tom listed for a potential move higher, and then the downside level listed for a potential move lower. Don't forget about TLT and Meta with their downside levels as well. These three stocks are on watch for potential day trade setups tomorrow. If and only if they break through the levels Tom listed. We want to see strong breakthroughs of the levels Tom listed and then continuations in those directions. Only trade them if they break through the levels, but those are the momentum plays for today. So let's get right into today's $1.5 million big money trade of the day. And in today's video, we are going to talk about a stock that most people have probably never heard of before, and that is BMEA. So this is a biopharmaceutical company. These types of stocks are like high risk, high reward. They're very crazy, and they move a ton based off of like, you know, news and the development of the treatments that these companies design, and they're just crazy stocks, right? I'm going to say it how it is. Today, we saw the big money take a bullish trade on this stock. It cost them $1.5 million, and they're betting on the stock going up. More specifically, they bought a call debit spread, and they bought the 15 strike call options that expire on April 19th of 2024, and they shorted the 20 strike call options that expire on April 19th of 2024. Again, this is a bullish trade. If you want to make your life nice and easy, you can not trade the call debit spread, and you can instead focus on the 15 strike calls for April 19th of 2024. I like the setup overall. It's just high risk, high reward, so it should only be traded if you can handle the heat.
Yeah, and I mean, it has a lot of volatility. If we go back to this stock and we start to scroll back throughout its history, ever since this stock came on the market, you know, it was pretty, I would say, flat to down at the beginning. But once it started getting some good volatility and good momentum coming in, this stock has had some pretty insane moves. And like, let's say somebody knows something with this. If one of these biopharma stocks starts popping off with like some drug news or something, that would be insane. So it was up 11% today. It started to pop at like the end of last year. So let's hope this uptrend continues. You know, it's starting to do well. It's a big money play. There's 1.5 million on the spread. Obviously, like Mike said, you could just play the 15 strike calls if you wanted, or maybe like, you know, something close to it. But at the end of the day, it could end up getting pretty volatile, and it's starting to pop off here today. So watch this one in the short term. I also like this, Mike, because it's pretty short term. There's not like a huge, you know, we're not waiting till 2026 with this one.
Right, exactly. And then another thing, kind of like Tom just touched on, like when someone quote unquote knows something with the stock, when you have like smaller time biopharmaceutical companies like this, if like let's say an insider knows that this company just came across like a brand new treatment or just some very substantial breakthrough, you know, odds are that would make the stock pop up in a pretty big way. And as we all know, it is not uncommon to see some pretty suspiciously timed trades happen in the stock market. So with smaller time biopharmaceutical companies like this, unusual options activity is especially unusual, because why else would someone put $1.5 million onto a relatively small time stock like this one with that short of an expiration date? But like I said, high risk, high reward. Keep a close eye on it in the short term. But Tom, looking at the market tomorrow, we're still very close to all-time highs. Looking at the heat map, we saw a handful of chip stocks move to the downside today, like NVIDIA, AMD, AVGO, Qualcomm, Intel, and a couple others, MU. They're not in full panic mode just yet, but it is worth noting that these stocks are definitely moving in ways that they haven't over the past couple of weeks and months. So I'm going to especially keep a close eye on these chip stocks. They've been running the show, and they have a direct, huge influence on the overall market, but even more importantly, they have a giant influence on the sentiment with the overall market.
Yeah, they really do. And guys, just do not forget also about that PPI data 1 hour before the market opens tomorrow. That could end up playing quite a big role in the early morning volatility. So keep that in mind too. Like, we might see the market gap down or gap up quite a bit depending if this hits or misses. So definitely be ready for that as well.
You know it. And then I also want to give a giant shout out to today's member of the day, Charlie St. Loud. He's been in the StockedUp Discord for a couple months now, and he made a nice, quick, and easy 20% today on the AMD puts from SurgeBot. So great job, Charlie. Keep up the great work. And if you guys aren't already a member of the StockedUp crew, consider becoming one by demolishing that subscribe button in the I guess you could say YouTube section down below. If you do that, you will see our videos recommended to you more often. In every single video, we cover the relevant things to know about for the market right now. We cover setups, predictions, big money trades, important charts that you won't find anywhere else, and we try to get all of this done in about 20 to 25 minutes or less. Besides that, thank you all so much for watching. We have 2 days left for the week, so let's make them count.